All right, so I am standing here with one of the most respected Canadian auteurs of his generation, Atom Egoyan. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Of course, yeah. It's good to be here. I was at the music museum today, riffing with Randy Bachman. They had this strange exhibit where they were showing all his guitars. So I'm sort of in this kind of strange high, just kind of like you could play guitar with him. So I thought that was pretty funny. Yeah.
Amazing. Hopefully, we can continue to ride that high through the evening. So we're here tonight to kind of celebrate your latest film, Seven Veils, and I'm just hoping that you can walk me through a little bit of this production, right? So it's centered on the opera Salome, which you directed back in 1996.
Well, originally, we remounted it about 6 months ago at the Canadian Opera Company, and so this is while the opera itself was being put on, we shot this film. So, and the film actually is about a woman who's come back to remount this show, and her kind of relationship to the story of Salome. Salome is the biblical story of the prophet John the Baptist, who gets beheaded by Salome because he refuses to look at her. So she basically asks her father, the king, to behead him so she can kiss his lips. So it's that famous scene of her kissing his lips on a platter. So, but it's a pretty violent story, and so it's she's dealing with aspects of her own life, and she begins to kind of blur the lines between what's happening in the opera and what's happening in her life.
Amazing. So, as I alluded to, right, like you've had a relationship with this opera for many, many years. Has your relationship changed with it over the decades, or how would you kind of describe?
I mean, for sure, because when we put on this production originally in the mid '90s, it was a radically different time, and so it's a strange thing when you do a remount because it's essentially supposed to be the same show, but this has been remounted 7 times in various places around the world. So I felt that I needed to shift my perspective on what the story is about. And I felt that this film and the character that Amanda Seyfried plays was a really cool way to do that, to kind of like make it her interpretation, even though it's dealing with my own interpretation. But it was, it was a pretty radical production when we mounted it in the mid-'90s, but it's also, I would say, pretty extreme. And there are a lot of things that you can't really do now without explaining. So times have changed, right? Yeah. So it's a very personal kind of process, and it was a very unique, and I'm very grateful to have made it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think some of those changes that have occurred over the last 30 years, right, are perhaps best shown through having a female director kind of lead that.
But also a female director dealing with these structures, power structures, because they're like an opera company, like any arts organization or any organization generally, is dealing with a shifting sort of code, like in terms of how people deal with power and how, abuses of power. So that's one of the latent themes of this film, right? And there's a number of characters. It's not just Amanda's character. There's a number of other people who are also dealing with these shifting, that's the drama in the piece. Like there's a number of male characters who have affected Janine, like in her background, her father, but also the person who originally mounted the show, like this character called Charles, which is not based on me, but I guess people might read it that way. I think he's a very problematic character. He's somebody who obviously they had a love affair when she was younger, and he's now passed away. And part of the reason she's doing this remount is that he's put in his will that if it was ever remounted, he wanted her to do it. But there are reasons for that, and we begin to wonder when we watch the film whether or not that's a gift to her or a curse. And it's a bit kind of like, it's a double-edged sort of like proposition. So it's pretty cool. Like there's a lot of things going on, and I'm pretty excited. We premiered it at the Toronto Film Festival. And this is one of the first times I'm seeing it with another audience, right?
Yeah, amazing. And I mean, I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but in some ways it does kind of seem like a culmination of your career, right? Your passion and history in opera,
Yeah.
these themes that you've explored in similar but slightly
I
different
mean,
ways.
this was a dream project. I've been hoping to do this for a long time, so I'm very grateful it got made. And it is. There's a lot of my obsessions in it for those who know my films for sure. And the other thing that's interesting is that the actual opera, when it was originally presented, was between Exotica and Sweet Hereafter. So the original kind of aesthetics were very much connected to what I was doing at that time. So it was interesting to go back to that period.
Amazing. So I'm cognizant of your time. So just before I let you know, in this kind of current era that we're living in, there's so many films being put out, and Canadian filmmakers are often kind of forgotten about or pushed aside. But yourself, Cronenberg, I mean, Sarah Polley, who obviously you've worked with, we have so many amazing Canadian directors. Is there anyone in particular that you are inspired by or that you wish kind of got more attention?
Listen, I think one of the best Canadian features came from here last year. Graham Foy's film, The Maiden, which was shot in Calgary. I think that's one of the best Canadian films I've seen in the past little while. It's the first feature, and I've seen it like 3 times. So yeah, I would give my I really am dying to see what he comes up with next. Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.